Welcome to another episode of Pardeep and Paramjeet show. This is Paramjeet. Pardeep, how are you, man?
Good. How are you, Parmjeet?
I'm okay. We were talking about in the previous episode about habit and the power of habit. And one of the things which was very interesting and you dropped into the conversation is the idea of self integrity. I was wondering if you would be comfortable unpacking it for our audience because I think that would have quite a valuable contribution how to think about habit and your role in forming a wholesome habit.
Yeah, great. So, as we were talking last time in the last episode, the big thing that stood out for me was how do you form a habit? How do you, aside from the technical thing, it came back to one element. I think it's one of the most important traits that every person should have. We already talked about discipline, right? So, there's a few traits that when people ask me, pretty, how does a person be successful? There's a number of traits that I have from my personal experience and from my research that I think are important. Discipline is definitely one of them. The next thing is self integrity. And for me, if I was just to simplify the meaning of self integrity for me, is really doing what you say and saying what you do. So essentially, if you tell yourself that you're going to do something, do it, right? Just get up and actually do it because the more times you do that, you build not only a habit, but you build the confidence to be able to do something again or something even greater. And if you tell yourself you're going to do something and you don't do it, you disappoint yourself. And whether it's at a conscious level or at an unconscious level, the more and more you don't do something you say you're going to do, you lose confidence. Inside, you tell yourself, well, maybe you're not good enough. Or you said you're going to do it last time, but you didn't do it. What makes you think you're going to do it this time? And I think this adds up because even though we don't feel it at a conscious level, we definitely feel it at an unconscious level. So I think one of the most powerful traits that a person can have, whether to be successful or be fulfilled in life, or even have great relationships, is to have self-integrity.
Yeah, and just adding to it, it just reminded me of the famous quotation by Lao Tse, the famous Chinese philosopher, who says that the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step.
Mhm.
So it doesn't matter whether you want to whip yourself into shape or you want to become a sincere student of meditation or you want to pursue some entrepreneurial pursuit. It's important to start. Um, and again, means I'm a kind of a sucker for good thoughts. The another good thought that comes to my mind is from the German philosopher Goethe, and he talks about there's a power and magic in starting something
Mhm.
because whenever you start, that shows that you have made a commitment to do something which is different than what you have done before. And sometimes when we make a commitment, whether that's a spiritual commitment or cognitive commitment or a kind of a even personal commitment, a different set of resources have to come in play. And because different set of resources have to come in play, that will change the way the next moment comes in or the next month comes in. So having that kind of a self integrity, that if you want, start. If nothing, just start.
Yeah, that's very important. So if you're gonna go to the gym, and rather than if you're not feeling well and you can't do your full workout, just go to the gym and do 5 or 10 minutes because you're actually doing something rather than doing nothing. So I think that's important, Parmjeet. You know how many times when I work out, I feel there's times, and this very consistently this happens. About halfway through my workout, I'm like, oh, what if I cut it short a little bit? Because I'm just giving it. But then I have to remind myself if I cut short today, I'm going to cut short tomorrow, or I'm more likely to cut short tomorrow. And the more I do that, I'm going to cut my workouts in half by the time I'm done with it by the end of the week. So today I'm going to finish just by focusing on this moment. I'm going to finish my workout, and I do that every single time, and I ensure that I finish it. And the more I see other people and other people's challenges, because you work with organizations, you work with individuals, I work with organizations and individuals, and I advise some of the top entrepreneurs or executives in their sectors, and sometimes even these high producing individuals don't finish something. They tell in our sessions, at our workshops, they will say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this done. And in our next session, they don't actually have it done. And a lot of times they apologize to me and they say, I'm sorry, Pradeep, I've let you down. And my response is pretty standard. You haven't let myself down. You've let yourself down. Or sorry, you haven't let me down. You've let yourself down. Because it doesn't matter to me whether you do it or not. It matters to you. And more importantly, it matters to your unconscious. Because if you are disappointed about your performance, there's no skin off my back that's taken away here. It's everything about where you want to be in life. So that's why we talk about integrity. Like if we talk about external integrity or integrity versus self integrity, there's a little bit of a difference, because you can tell someone else that you're going to do something, and yes, they may be disappointed, but whatever. I'm going to say, you know what? That's not as important as self integrity, because if you tell yourself something and you don't do it, you're letting yourself down. And that's more important, I think, because at the end of the day, your life is a reflection of you. It's a direct reflection of you. It's a direct reflection of how you behave. Yes, it's a reflection of all the other people around you. But the better you feel about yourself, the better you're actually going to feel about your life. So that's kind of my nutshell approach there, Parmjeet, is the more self-integrity, from my perspective, the more self-integrity you have, the more successful you will be, the more fulfilled you will be in your relationships and all other aspects of your life.
I'm thinking, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about another thing that could have a far-reaching consequences on somebody's ability to identify and then change a habit. And that's where do we draw the line between being heavily self-disciplined, means unapologetically disciplined and accountable, and a kind of a self-kindness or compassion. So for example, I will piggyback on your example that you are not feeling okay, and you feel like skipping the workout. I'm just thinking how we can apply these two things. So you don't feel okay, you don't want to stress your body further, but you also want to sustain your habit so that you don't
Mhm.
do it often enough so that you fall off the wagon. So I was wondering if you have in your personal life, you try to bring it together that you, okay, I don't want to be self-critical too much, because that is going to have a kind of a long-term consequences on my mental and physical health. I want to be kind at this moment because this is the moment which requires me to be kind to myself. So
Yeah.
do you have you ever experienced that, or
Uh,
do you ever come across these kind of events where you feel challenged? And if so, how do you actually work through that? Because I think a lot of people will take this advice that, okay, be accountable, but is there a space where you can be kind also, so that you don't push it over the board, which becomes harmful? So somebody getting into exercise addiction, something like that.
mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a very good point there, because I think answer your question, yes, you have to be kind, because you can't, if you're sick and you're going to puke and you're working out, that's not a good thing at the end of the day, because it's not going to help your body any anyway. So I think there's instances where you do have to be giving yourself some slack, where you say, "Hey, today's not the day, but maybe I'll push twice as hard tomorrow." Right? It's when that self-kindness becomes an excuse. And
Yeah.
I think that's the difference. And we know, and it's hard to fool ourselves. Like we try to, but we can't, because we know when something becomes an excuse. If you're truly not feeling good, you know, okay, I don't have to work out today, or maybe I just go for a walk instead. But if the next day you're like, I still don't feel good, but I can work out, or you know what, and then it becomes an excuse, that's something to take a look at. So that's everything. I think, Parmjeet, requires a little bit of judgment there.
Yeah, it's as you're saying, I'm thinking of those meditators who actually sit for a long period of time. For example, they will sit for 1 or 2 hours in a sitting, and sometimes sitting for 1 hour even can be very labor intensive for the body,
Hmm.
because you're sitting without moving, you're paying attention. It can be difficult, and in meditation practice, there's always a kind of these two opposite oppositionally, or well, let me put a different word, almost like opposing things happening, that you have to keep in mind that doing the process is doing what needs to be done. Whether you are meditating, you are paying attention, the idea is that the second part where the self kindness come in, that you have to let go of the outcome for
Mm,
that. So for example, you're exercising, you're participating in the process of exercising, but today for today you don't have that kind of a exalted or a lofty or big ticket kind of expectations. You are participating in so you're letting go of the outcome. so
mm,
so even in meditation practice, it's oftenly emphasized kindness is not license for laziness.
mm.
It is, or self kindness, let me specify, self kindness is not is license for laziness, irresponsibility and unaccountability. You
Yes.
still have to do your part. You still have to drag yourself off the bed, from the cozy quilt onto the cushion, and do what needs to be done, because that's what a, a disciplined individual would do.
Mhm.
That's what a person who have a disciplined habit would do.
Yeah, very good point there, and I think this is important because yes, you do have to cut yourself some slack sometimes. That's just what life is about. I've seen people be overly disciplined, and they can't laugh, they can't have fun. They're so worried about being disciplined that they forget about actually living their life. And I think that's something that you want to stay away from. Discipline is supposed to bring more joy, more freedom to your life, not less. And so I think that's important to pay attention to. And here's what I see. There are individuals, and it's very easy to see. It's very to pick out now. You know, if someone is has a lot of self-integrity and they forget to do something, or they get overwhelmed, or they're just not feeling well, whatever that is, yes, absolutely. Like that's okay. But then there's individuals that constantly do that, right? And if someone says something to me and the next week it's the same excuse, or it's a different excuse but they haven't done it, that's when you know that either something has to change, whether they say I need to focus on having more self-integrity, or maybe even saying maybe that goal isn't for me. So if you find that it's too difficult to exercise or be disciplined, first of all, I think it's important to change your approach, right? Try different approaches, try the discipline from different angles, because the same thing or the same result, the end goal can be done many different ways. Maybe that's something to take a look at. Maybe the way you're approaching it, the 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 discipline isn't maybe the best way for you. So try to take a look at it from different angles. But if you've tried so many different angles, if you've asked people for help, and you're still finding it difficult, then maybe that goal that you're trying to reach isn't for you. Maybe you have to downplay your goal a little bit, or maybe have a different goal. So there's different approaches because, Parmji, I think ultimately, if your discipline is making your life miserable, something has to change.
Yeah, it means you have got the things pretty much in a reverse order. uh, and I want to in this context, similarly, that's what happens even in meditation practices, that a lot of people would keep on changing teachers, keep on changing studios, keep on changing techniques, without ever realizing that techniques are a tool.
Hmm.
uh, you can have as many tools in your garage, but if you absolutely no idea how to use them, they're pretty much useless. That's an investment gone bad. So you can change as many teachers for meditation, you can visit as many studios, you can do as many retreats, long term retreats. But if you don't do the very basic work, which means that you have to form a habit and be disciplined about it and hold yourself accountable without being overly strict about it, you can do what you can go to Buddha and he will not be able to help, because ultimately you have to do the work. And that happens in my individual coaching. Means I will tell people that, remember, things are simple, but the problem about things being simple is that it means you have to work hard to do things.
Hmm.
It's just like, means the idea of meditation is like going to the washroom. Nobody gonna do it for you.
No.
You can visit swanky washroom, you still have to do it. You can visit a kind of a run of the mill kind of a washroom, you still have to do it. Means ultimately end of the day you are the one who is doing your business. And that's true for exercise, that's true for meditation, that's true for anything. And part of it is that if you're disciplined, then it becomes easier. um, and going back to the idea of self and self identity and what we talked in the previous podcast about self knowledge, I think that's why it is important for us to know why we are trying to change what we need to change. Means why do somebody take on the idea of exercising? What exactly are they just
Hmm.
trying to whip them into shape, or there's a something bigger thing?
Hmm.
Because getting into shape may be an end in itself and may be useful one, but sometimes people have changed the way they look at their life.
Hmm.
Maybe they want to add value to other things, maybe they want to improve their marital harmony, relationship with their spouse. Maybe they want to get healthier, maybe doctor prescribed it. uh, but as a coach, what is one thing uh, you will tell someone in this context, if you ever get to have a conversation in this context? What is one parting thing you will tell that, if you want to start this, maybe the one thing you need to start from here?
About creating self integrity.
Yep.
Well, I always say start small, because it's the principle of whether it's weight training or cognitive exercises or any type of skill that you're trying to develop. Self integrity is a skill itself. It's not just an innate trait. I think that a lot of people think it's a skill that can be built. You can be extremely. You can build your self integrity, and just because you don't, or you may have less of it now, doesn't mean you can't have a lot of it later. So I think that's the most important thing, is you can build on it, and you build on it by starting small and adding to it. So that's ultimately it. Like you said, start and then continue to add to it. Just like weight training, you don't start by bench pressing 400 pounds. You got to start somewhere and then add on weight every week, maybe after, a month, whatever it is for you. But just continue to challenge yourself a little bit. And science, the studies show that the optimal, in terms of making sure that it's not too aggressive of a target or a change so you get discouraged, and it's enough to keep you challenged, is roughly about 4%. Right, so we're talking about from physical activity, even cognitive activities. By challenging yourself an additional 4%, you're more likely to actually continue. So if you're going for a walk for, you know, 100 minutes, then add on 104 minutes. So it's a gradual increase of building that skill. Then at some point in time, you're going to realize, wow, like, this is becoming a lot easier for me now. What was tough before is now easy. Um, Parmji, I think the other thing is also continuing to challenge ourselves, because I think that's one of the main important things of in life, is to continually challenge ourselves so we continually grow. Not overly challenge ourselves so it becomes gruesome, but if we're continuing to grow and we look back and we say, hey, look how much I've grown or evolved over the last year, that brings fulfillment in life. So that's the other part of self integrity as well, I think, is just continue to challenge yourself, because once you stop challenging yourself, I think, and I've seen this with many men, entrepreneurs in careers, whatever it is, once they miss that challenge, they they start to, their quality of life starts to diminish as well.
Yeah, it's actually, as you are saying, I'm reminded of some of the precepts in, for example, in yoga practice. They will say that, okay, if you're getting into this complicated posture, if you are trying to stretch your hamstring, that the balance is that you need to challenge your body so that the body can improve, but you have to stop short of pushing yourself so that the body goes into permanent damage. So
Mhm.
snapping your uh, hamstring is not going to be very useful for yoga practice or any kind of practice over the period of time, but challenging yourself can help you strengthen your body. So I think that idea can be translated in almost every segment of pursuit, that you challenge, and challenging improves the body. And just stopping short of self harm is where the self kindness we were talking about comes in. So those
Mm,
two have to come together so that we continue to stay challenged, thus improving, and also continue to deploy self kindness so we do not push ourselves to the point where it becomes harmful to the body or to the family or to the business or to the society.
mhm. Oh, I think that's a great topic. I think we can talk about that on the next episode because whether it's habits or whatever we do, the impact on ourselves is one thing, but also the impact on others. You talked about family, and I think that's something that we should talk about in a future episode because a lot of the times people do things without realizing what the impact is on others. So let's save that for another conversation. Do you have any last words for our audience here?
No, that's it. Thank you for sharing. I would again reiterate what Pradeep has said. Start small, be disciplined, be gentle, be curious. And as I always say, reasonably non judgmental. And and on that note, we can wrap this up. Thank you, Pradeep, for sharing your insight. And thank you, folks, for tuning in. If you find this conversation useful, please subscribe to our channel, share with other people, send us feedback. We will be deeply grateful. Until next time, stay tuned.
Thank you.
Bye for
Until
now.
next time.